here in Southeast Texas, and what I want to talk about tonight is the Mars MSL images, which are showing up in half a dozen to a dozen Facebook groups, and some of which I've been reposting on the Ganymede Hypothesis group. And I think a lot of people would like to get a better look at some of these images, starting from raw NASA background images. And it's one of these funny things where I think you learn best by doing. I'm going to switch to a screen view so that you can see my screen, the screen of my computer, and take a look at some of these software items which are involved in this process. Go over here to share screen, and I'm going to share the entire screen and start. And the first thing you see is a kind of an Einstein mirror clock, which you have to just get rid of, right? Just put that thing down, and now you should be seeing the screen that I use. Okay, I think this is Google's Chrome browser. There are two pieces of software which I use on a regular basis, and in fact maybe three if you want to count the Paint package, which comes with Microsoft Windows. That's free. IrfanView is free. That's a free download from irfanview.com. And GIMP, the package which is used to create the interface for the GNU interface, like for Linux systems, is also free. That's gimp.org. You can download both of these packages. Now, you could probably do most, if not all, of the things which I do just using GIMP, but to my way of thinking, it's a little bit easier to have a couple of packages which each have their own little specialty things which they do a very good job of quickly and easily. And I'm going to show you a little bit of this. Now, the other thing, like I said, I've got IrfanView here, which is a free sort of macro image handling package, and then GIMP, which is a free version of something similar to Paintbrush. Okay, then there's a website which is called gigapan.org, which I just said that wrong, gigapan.com, which basically handles large map type images. And you have a gentleman by the name of Neville Thompson, who has been stitching these MSL images together to form contiguous images. And the first thing you would want to do is get to gigapan.com and register for an account. Like, I'm just going to go to log in, right? If you didn't have an account, you would sign up for one. Not a member yet, sign up. You would have to do that. It's free. It's fairly simple. I'm going to sign in with my own username and password. Okay, so then we have do you want Chrome to save your password for this site? Save, sure. You have the main pieces of the picture here. The first thing you would want to do is to get a look at some of these MSL images and just have some sort of a feel for what they look like. The first thing you might do is just type in Neville Thompson in the search window for gigapan.com. Neville Thompson. Start to get older. The first thing it starts to go is your memory for names, right? Okay, and you can get an idea of this. These are some of the first items which come up. You've got a lot of material to choose from here, right? And you can see that some of these images are very large. you can see that the images have been stitched together frame by frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and if you were to click on one of these, then it brings that image up. And these images are made for panning and zooming. They're very large. They're several miles across and sometimes 3, 4, 5 miles deep. And you start to lose resolution. Now, what you'd actually like to have on Mars, if it were possible, would be like some sort of a drone, like one of Hobby King's little Bixler or floater jet toy airplanes with a good camera on it to send out and take a look at areas of interest. The atmosphere on Mars, I don't think, would support that. So that the only thing you can really do is have this rover rolling around with the highest resolution camera you can possibly get on it and take these huge pictures and then try to pan and zoom to things which you find to be interesting. Okay, and that's what we're seeing here. You can see that I can, basically pan and zoom all over the place. Now, what is it you're seeing on Mars? You're seeing a lot of, there's no shortage of rocks on Mars. You've got basically a planet which looks as if it was just picked up and shaken the way a dog might shake a rat. So that you have rock plates and structures just lying around on top of each other, catawampus all over creation. You've got, in many places, you have like mechanical junk and debris strewn across the sands. You've got the remains of structures, some small, others quite large. Sometimes you get things which, you would have to be the judge as to whether you're seeing rocks or the remains of structures. You get a lot of rectangular things and right angles. You get, nature doesn't do like, straight lines and Bezier curves and perfect ovals and perfect rectangles in wholesale lots, right? You might find 1 or 2 things like that, which are just occurring in nature. Here would be something which you'd have to ask yourself whether you were seeing rocks or the remains of a wall or some sort of a structure. You can get an idea of this. Now, the question is, what do you do if you find some sort of a thing which you think is interesting and you'd like to show it to your friends? This is why you had to sign up and get your own account for GigaPan, right? Suppose, for instance, let's find something that's not going to be very interesting, right? But say this little area, right? Well, let's go over here. Say I wanted to show this to some friend of mine, but if I just go zoom all the way back out, it's going to be hard to find again. You see what I'm saying? It's like if I want to point this out to some friend, then if I were to just provide the URL for the whole image, he's not going to have an easy time finding it. What I'm going to do, since I do have an account with gigapan.com, is to go to the little thing on the left here which says snapshots. Okay, I'm going to say take a snapshot. And I'm going to make this snapshot sort of a reasonable size for this. And over here, I'm going to have to provide a name and a description. Let's say point of interest, right? And then put like level plateau or level area in MSL 1284. Okay, you can see this is MSL 1284-85 by Neville Thompson. I've just provided enough information to save, right? And then what I'm going to do is go to my GigaPan here, click my GigaPan, and then snapshots, right? And the last thing that I did is going to show up in the upper left here. which is going to be the same thing. You see the way that it zooms automatically, or zooms and pans automatically. I'm going to basically just Control-C, copy the URL for this snapshot, which I've just created. Now, if I were to send this URL, it's it's gigapans 185.679 snapshots, 7 snapshots 488.345. Let's bring up another browser here, Opera, right, and just go to a blank tab, Control-V, right, paste that URL in here, and click. And this is what your friend would be seeing. So it goes right to it. Nonetheless, you've got a little bit of a problem if you want to just show this. You might want to show your friend something else, because this is a little bit blurry, right? And the problem is that you've got a camera which is taking pictures at extreme range, right? I mean, not all the time, right? But it's like it often occurs that the thing you want to show somebody is not like right up next to the camera. It could be like a mile or 2 miles out from this high resolution camera. And you've got this sort of a dead color scheme that you get from these MSL images, and I think that's some kind of an artifact of the technology. I don't think NASA employees are deliberately blurring things. It's just the way the nature of the beast, right? So suppose for a moment that I want to send a buddy of mine something a little bit more elegant than this. What I'm going to do is to make the area that I'm interested in about what you would want, in other words, to where I get most of what I'm looking at on the screen, but as big as possible. Then I'm going to take a picture of this whole screen, right? Control print screen. Okay, which is what you do. It's not basically just capturing a screenshot. Control print screen. Now I'm going to bring up this Irfan view program. The last thing I did with Irfan view was to take a picture of the cat with his eyes wide. Okay, I'm going to say Shift N, new image, and then Control V, right, which is this thing. Irfan view does a very good job of basically just taking cutouts and snapshots of images and often resizing these images. We'll write Control Y so that I've got the little area that I wanted, and now I'm going to say Control C, copy it, and put Irfan view down, right? Then I'm going to bring up the GIMP package, which also has the last thing I was doing with GIMP shows there. I'm going to Control Shift V to bring up a new image from the Windows clipboard. Okay, now I've got the same thing that I was looking at, but I can work with it a little bit. I'm going to say colors, and then levels, and then auto. And that's usually good enough. I mean, for most purposes, that would suffice. Okay, I'm going to say OK here. And then there are two other kinds of things I might want to do. One would be to use this Dodge Burn tool that GIMP provides to lighten this image, since this is a little bit darker than I like. Okay, so I've lightened the image a little bit. And then I'm going to go to Filters and Enhance. And the most powerful of the enhancing filters is called Unsharp Mask. Okay, I'm going to set the values to radius of 5. This is pretty standard. An amount of 70% and a threshold of 1. You click OK. And that's basically going to just sharpen the lines. In other words, that just says that anything which looks like a line or a curve or something like that, but fuzzy, is going to get unfuzzied. Now, here I can just say Edit, Copy. Right, and I could, if I want to show this to somebody on Facebook, for instance, I mean, this is pretty easy to do. 1284, 1285. Okay. Facebook. I'm going to go to my own home page and, like, let's say Theodore, right? Make it easy on myself. If you go to start with something, then it has to be, you know, like sitting on the internet somewhere. Whereas if I pick something which already exists, then I could just say Control V. Okay, and hit return. Okay, now I've just added this, and somebody could click on it and they could get a look at it. Or you could just send that image to somebody with email, right? That's sort of the idea of what you can do with these free software packages. I mean, it's pretty elegant. Let's take a look at a couple of things that you might find. Another way that you could go looking for images rather than just go to gigapan.com and start looking through Neville Thompson's material would be to go to Facebook, and you've got like a half dozen to a dozen Facebook groups which are dedicated to going over these Mars MSL images, so that I could just go to Facebook and type in Mars, right? Let's try that again. Mars, exclusive Mars images. That's a Facebook group, public group. 8,500. What's that? 8,589 members. That sounds like enough people, right? And you can just scroll through the latest and greatest until you find something where somebody has included a URL. This would be one of Neville Thompson's gigapans. Okay, candelabra. Let's see what they're talking about, MSL 1282. So you go to the original here, which is Neville Thompson's, you know, concatenated gigapan image. You're going to come back to gigapan.com. And they found something I thought was interesting in this picture. You're going to have to search and find it if you want to go and find that, right? It usually happens that when somebody finds one interesting thing in one of these gigapans, there's more than one, right? So you could just go searching through, and the things that you find might be more than a little bit interesting. It might not be the same thing that somebody else found, right? So you've got all kinds of possibilities. You know, these kinds of things that you're seeing here could be rocks, or they could be some kind of a structure which just looks like a rock because it's been lying there being encrusted with dust for like the last 10,000 years, right? What are these? I mean, remains of walls, rocks, who knows? But you get the idea. Sometimes let's get out of Opera here and go back to my Chrome screen. I had saved a couple of things off for people to look at here. Here's an interesting sort of a thing. This is a gigapan image, Yellowknife Bay, right? Sol 184. And this doesn't look like a whole hell of a lot of anything, does it? I mean, what you're seeing here, you've got a large gigapan. You can see 1, 2, 3, like how many frames does it include? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Looks like 19 or 20 frames, which have been stitched together. And you can see the arm of the rover. Okay, so that we're sitting here, the camera's looking right out over the rover. And at this level, it doesn't look like much of anything, does it? It just looks like a bunch of rocks. Nonetheless, you can zoom, and you might start to see things if you zoom them up. This looks interesting over here. I mean, you've got some tracks, which probably the rover, and then some kind of a thing which almost looks like like it's been covered with some sort of a tarpaulin or a canvas. Okay, no real way to tell what that is. Let's come back to the rover. And then if we go out over here, this still doesn't look like much of anything. But look what happens when you zoom all the way to the limits of resolution, or close to the limits of resolution. Here you have something which looks like a rock, only, you know, real rocks don't have gull wing doors like an old 1958 Mercedes 300 SL, right? This is a sort of a door that folds outwards. Here you've got the head of a statue. Here you've got some sort of a piece of angle iron or something like that protruding out of what looks like a rock. And then you've got this, and this is what caught somebody's attention. Now, this is a human scale, and to get to the human scale, they had to zoom 4, 5, or 6 times, right? So you can see the size and the scope of these gigapan images. So you might decide for yourself, like, okay, I would really like to get a better look at this, because this looks like, you know, that's a sort of a red-orange color, which doesn't really occur on Mars. And this, let's take a look. Let's hit Control, print screen again, and let's go back to Earth-End view and play this little game a second time. Control V, right? Let's make ourselves a little rectangle of all the things that we're interested in here. Control Y, right? Control C, copy. And then let's go to the GIMP package once again. Control Shift V, right? And let's go to colors, levels, auto again. Oh boy. Now here the red-orange color still stands out. That's still there. The other colors have been leveled pretty much. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to keep that. Then I'm going to say filters. I'm going to repeat the unsharp mask filter. That's what, boy, oh boy, oh boy. Do you see what we're looking at here? This is very clearly the head of a statue. You can see eyes, you can see the nose, you can see the mouth, and you can see the general outlines of a human face. You've got, you know, a piece of what I call rock with double quotes around it, and then a gull wing door to the rock, right? You've got a piece of angle iron, which you can see now. And then you've got what I would call some sort of a female employee of NASA with some sort of a minimalistic backpack on and with strawberry blonde hair. Okay, the strawberry blonde color doesn't really occur naturally on Mars. Okay, you've got khaki colored pants, you've got, like I say, a dark colored jacket or something like that. And she's sitting here, look, you know, just examining the head of the statue. That's sort of interesting. Let's look at a couple of other things which I've sort of saved over here. MSL 803. Okay, here you've got another one of these gigapan images. You don't need to enhance or magnify this. This is obviously standing water. Okay, now you read some of these reports coming from NASA, and they talk about finding a drop of water here and there. Well, I mean, these images are showing water in greater quantities than drops. Okay, the images are showing water, you know, both flowing and standing water. You would expect that somewhere in the neighborhood of standing water, you might find human activity, right? And if you zoom in a little bit more here, you have something which seems to include like a garage or some sort of a covered or enclosed storage area with what appears to be packages. You've got some kind of a level flat surface here. And you've got what actually may be lettering here, hard to say. right? But you'd like to get a better look at it. Let's do the same thing we've been doing. Control, print screen, and take a snapshot. Let's get back to Orphan view here. Let's say Control V, right? And here's my little area of interest for this one. Let's make this rectangle a little bit bigger here. Control Y, Control C, copy, right? And bring up GIMP. Just bring up any one of these things that you've already been working on. Control Shift V. Okay, put the lady astronaut back down, and let's do our little thing with this. We go to colors, levels, auto is good enough. You've got other ways of adjusting colors here. You can play with it. You can adjust the colors as level lines, or you can adjust the colors just by brightness and contrast, just mixing them up by hand, right? Or auto adjust. That's a little bit brighter than you might want. No, in fact, let's cancel that. Let's say colors, and let's just do the thing with brightness and contrast. We don't need anything fancier than that for this image. And I'm going to stop before I get to being blinded here. I'm going to do something like this, okay, but that's at least reasonable. And then I'm going to go to filters and repeat the unsharp mask filter and edit, copy, right? And come back to Orphan view and hit Control V. See, that just got quite a bit sharper, right? And you can see that these are packages in here. You've got some kind of an enclosed building structure, and then you've got packages inside some sort of an open doorway, right? So, I mean, these are not rocks, okay? These are things which fall into the non-rock category. See if there was anything else that I wanted anybody to look at. One final thing, and then we're going to end this. MSL 1049, right? Again, at the resolution that it starts with, you don't see anything spectacular out of the ordinary, right? You see a lot of rocks. There's no shortage of rocks on Mars. I mean, they're all over the place. You know, some of the gigapans don't really show anything other than rocks. I mean, that's not something to get discouraged over. But let's go down here to the leftmost corner to get a look at the thing which Martine Briney, I believe, found, and which was interesting to say the least. If you zoom in on this just enough here, then you get a kind of a doorway here. This is sort of like at the level of maximum zoom, right? So let's just get the doorway and do the same thing again, right? Control print screen. And go to Orphan view. Control V, right? Let's just snap the little area that we're interested in, which is the doorway, and whatever that is behind the doorway. Control Y, right? Control C, and bring that into the GIMP package. Control Shift V, right? New image from the Windows clipboard. Control Shift V, and go to colors and levels and auto levels. The auto levels are going to be good enough for this, right? That's fine. Filters, repeat the unsharp mask filter. What we have here is like a torso, an arm, and basically we've got another woman peering from around a doorway. And this is not a NASA employee. It's like a NASA employee wouldn't be looking at the rover from behind a doorway as if she didn't know what it was. This is an indigenous human, okay? In these images, we're for the last couple of years, the MSL images, we've been seeing indigenous humans. We've been, well, I'm sorry, it's like there have been indications that there were going to be indigenous humans turning up. It's only within the last 4 or 5 months that I've started seeing like images of indigenous humans, which were clear enough that you could make a statement, right? That you're not going to feel ashamed of yourself talking about it. Small animals, things which resemble ground squirrels, gophers, snakes, right? Little small predators, what I call orange-red woolly bullies. And let me break out of this print or share screen mode here. Stop sharing, right? And come back to something which looks like, yeah, okay, so you come back to just a normal sort of the screen here, but that's what's been turning up in these Mars MSL images. Why they haven't been shouting this to the rooftops, I mean, there's different versions. You can believe whoever you want to, right? It's like, apparently there's some sort of a conflict at NASA and at the JPL. It's like the last I spoke with anybody that had any real contacts in NASA. So there was a non-meeting in the minds. About half the people were willing to believe their eyes and believe what they were seeing. The other half weren't. In other words, they would have to completely throw away the entire theory that they've heard all their lives about the history of our solar system, right? In other words, there's no way to believe that, you know, that Mars has always been where it is now, and that nothing completely catastrophic has ever happened on Mars, or at least within the last million years or thereabouts, right? And that you would find living creatures running around on it, right? Now, the impression I get is that, you know, these indigenous humans and the creatures that you find are spending most of their lives underground. Okay, they're coming out for a half hour, an hour or so, like around noontime. You don't see shadows going outwards from them. The sun appears to be overhead. You've got some sort of an atmosphere on Mars. I mean, it's like they say it's about like the atmosphere on Earth at 15,000 feet. You could breathe that if you put your mind to it, right? If you got used to it, it's like the images of NASA employees that I've seen appear as if they're wearing a sort of a minimalistic oxygen tank, like you would wear for scuba diving. Other than that, they're dressed the way you would dress for walking around Baltimore or Chicago, right? I mean, it's not, they're not walking around in spacesuits. You know, this is what's interesting. This is what's been turning up. NASA, you know, it's like their charter requires them to publish these images, but there's too many of them, right? NASA is just a government agency. They don't have the number of eyes that it would take to go through all of these images pixel by pixel and try to weed anything out or to try to protect the public's eyes from anything. You know, they're just putting these images out on their websites, and the hell of it is that the internet does have the number of eyes it takes to go over these images, one pixel at a time. And in particular, you've got these dozen or so Facebook groups which are doing that. At any rate, that's the lesson for tonight. I believe most people learn by doing a little bit better than they learn by reading about things. And if you've paid attention to this carefully, or if you go back through it, then you can download these two software packages, again, EarthNView and GIMP, and you can start going over these Mars gigapan images on your own. Good enough. I'll catch up with you next time.